The August 15th deadline has come and gone, but the conversation around conference realignment is nowhere close to dead. It's rumored that there's going to be a vote tomorrow within the ACC to potentially add more teams to the conference, and we're going to tell you what we're hearing will likely happen there in just a moment. But let me know in the comments, do you think that the 15 votes in the ACC will add teams tomorrow, or will they not add teams? Let me know down below. Yesterday, Pat Forty of Yahoo reported that Condoleezza Rice from Stanford and George W. Bush, SMU, contacted ACC officials to lobby for those schools to get an ACC invite. Well, they're pretty desperate for their teams to not get left behind, which makes sense, and it might just work. Political pressure does wonders. You're seeing folks in Florida State's camp, in Tallahassee, and in Congress lobbying for Darrell Jackson to be able to play in the NCAA to undo his waiver decision. But these teams desperately want the same thing that Notre Dame wants. And we've talked about this before. Notre Dame has a huge desire for the ACC to add more teams. And it's pretty much in direct opposition to what Florida State and Clemson want. Well, why does Notre Dame want to add teams? We've talked about this before, but Notre Dame loves their independence. And there's not another conference alive that's stupid enough, like the ACC was, to let Notre Dame join as a partial member. The Big Ten certainly wouldn't let that, and most conferences wouldn't. Most teams are pretty upset about how Notre Dame is 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and trying to control what they want, but because they are who they are, it's pretty likely that Notre Dame ends up getting their way. We'll get to that more in just a moment. But adding more teams, and this is a point that we'll talk about several times today, adding more teams makes the conference as a whole harder to dissolve. And Notre Dame doesn't want this conference to dissolve. They like their independence in football, and they want to keep their other sports afloat by keeping them in the ACC. Adding more teams, whether that be SMU, Cal, Stanford, whatever the situation, makes it harder to dissolve the league. They also want to prop the league up so that it doesn't just collapse after Florida State and Clemson are able to get out, whether that be soon, later, whenever. They want this conference viable, and it makes sense. Again, if they have to go to the Big Ten, I think the Big Ten makes them join as a full member. I don't think they give them the sweetheart deal or the idiot deal that the ACC gave them. And so they want to prop the league up as much as they can. They also are doing this because they want to remain independent. We talked about how much they like their independence. And if the ACC crashes, they're going to have to be forced into the Big Ten. And again, Notre Dame is opposed to all of this. Notre Dame, I've said this a few times, they know their status and they know their place in college football. But their arrogance and, just their idea of their self-inflated importance is pretty comical to see. And it's hilarious to see how not only do they know they're the cool guys at the table, they think they're so much more important than they truly are. Thinking that they can boss the ACC around and force the ACC to do what they want is pretty funny, but at the same time, it is a weak conference that Notre Dame might have some success doing that with. Florida State and Clemson could potentially barter with the ACC if the conference really wanted to add more teams, but that's if and only if they can hold up the addition at this vote that's rumored to happen tomorrow. They'll need 2 more teams to agree with them. And just letting you know, I don't trust North Carolina or NC State. Now, we'll see. I'd love to be wrong about this, and I'd love for North Carolina and NC State to hold strong and vote with Florida State and Clemson, but I'm just not sure that they will. We'll get to what I think happens with the vote in just a moment, but this isn't a good thing for the Noles or the Tigers. And we'll talk about that as soon as I give some love to my good friend Alex Knapp. Listen, I've told you guys about him a couple of times now. He is a diehard Seminole fan who owns Knapp Accident and Injury. It's a law firm that specializes in car accidents, Uber and Lyft accidents, personal injury, and more. Listen, you may not need him today, But if you're ever hurt or ever injured in any type of an accident, let my guy take care of you. He's always there for his clients. You don't deal with a paralegal or case manager. You get his direct line. So lock his number into your phone, and my guy Alex Knapp will take care of you. If you know someone who needs him and would like a free consultation, reach out to Knapp Accident and Injury. Let them know TJ at Double Fries No Slaw sent you, and he will take care of you. We've also got some giveaways coming up with Alex and his firm, so stay tuned for those. So why is this bad for FSU and Clemson? Well, it's bad for the Noles and Tigers for basically all the reasons that it's good for Notre Dame. It helps the ACC stay together once the conference loses its big two powers. After the Noles and Tigers bolt, which whether that's announced tomorrow or in 2 years, the ACC is going to feel a weakness. And what the Pac-12 should have done is add teams. The ACC is at least smart enough to realize that their biggest two brands are on their way out the door, and they're trying to do everything they can to keep the conference afloat beyond that. If you don't add teams, you will die. And the Big 12 understood it. That's why they added smaller brands like UCF and others. The Pac-12 didn't get it. And that's why ACC is trying their best to keep it afloat. But if you're a Florida State and Clemson fan, you want the conference to dissolve once you leave. You may owe money, and the ACC may own your rights for the next 13 years or whatever that number ends up being. But if the conference dissolves 3 years into that, then your rights go with it. So I think if you're a Clemson or Florida State fan, you want to be very mindful of that. And you want to understand that that's why you don't vote for this to happen. Teams that do vote for this to happen probably don't have a good landing spot. They probably realize that their safest bet is to stay in the ACC and just be a basketball school. That's what North Carolina is going to do anyway. That's what Duke's going to do. That's what Wake Forest is going to do. That's what a lot of these teams really care about. And so if you're a Florida State or Clemson fan, it goes in direct opposition to what your desires are for what Notre Dame wants. Getting to 8 teams to dissolve this conference is going to be tough enough. But if they add 3 more teams and you have an 18-team ACC, you're never getting to 10 to dissolve it. The conference is likely to not fail at that point, and it would not be good news for the Noles and the Tigers. Now, there's conversations about challenging the grant of rights and trying to get out of that from a legal perspective, and some of that may happen. It may not. But I will tell you this, your chance of the conference dissolving and no longer being relevant are almost zero if the ACC adds more teams. The ACC knows this. Notre Dame knows this. The small peon teams and programs in this conference know it. And that's why I'm worried about this vote. Now, the vote is rumored to happen tomorrow, and it sounds like there is a meeting, and it won't be just a straw poll vote where they all raise their hands. It will be an official vote that may happen. And I don't mean to be negative about this, but I think there's a good chance that this goes through. I think it passes, and more teams get added to the league. Now, there's a conversation that when this happens, different teams like Stanford, Cal, SMU may forego their money in the short term. And the money that is added to the league would be split among the remaining 15 members. Seems like a good thing? No? Well, it's really not. It's an inconsequential amount of money in the grand scheme of things. And again, it does more to strengthen the league when Florida State and Clemson would be helped the most by the league dissolving. The other teams in this conference just don't have a future that's as certain as Florida State and Clemson's. Florida State and Clemson know that they're getting out of here and know that that will eventually happen. Other teams realize that that probably isn't their situation, and they are looking for more stability. But I just don't trust teams like Miami, UNC, and others. Clemson is our only dancing partner, and I'd love to be wrong about this and do an update tomorrow that tells you guys, hey, the votes went our way, and we were able to block more teams from joining. Now, just because that August 15th deadline has passed, it does not mean that Florida State has stopped exploring ways to leave. There's actually a really easy way that they could get out of the ACC, and it has to do with going to the Big Ten and letting the ACC keep FSU's media rights. If you haven't seen our video on that or how that's extremely possible, You can click right here to check it out.